Welcome everyone to the February 18th, 2025 council meetings. Before the council met for a brief closed section, it was moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor McCann, that pursuant to section 239(2) and 3 of the Municipal Act SO 2001 C25 as amended, Council of the Corporation of the Town of Parry Sound moved to a special meeting closed to the public in order to address a matter pertaining to K, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, request for financial relief from water sewer servicing fees, and that was carried and the meeting was held. This meeting is live streamed and recorded and available on the internet by visiting the Town of Parry Sound website at www.parrysound.ca. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people under the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850 and the waterways traveled by the Métis of this region. May I have a mover and seconder for the agenda, please? Councillor Keith and Councillor Ashford. Any prioritization of the agenda or additions? Councillor McDonald?
Yes, thank you, Worship. I'd like to request that we have that resolution that was drafted regarding waiving the rental fee of the BOCC for the all candidates meeting coming up next Tuesday.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anything further? Then that the minutes of the regular council meeting held February 4th, 2025 and special capital budget meeting held February, I'm getting into the minutes. The council agenda for February 18th be approved as amended. All in favor? That's carried. Mover and seconder for the minutes. Councillor McDonald and Councillor McCann. The minutes from the regular council meeting held February 4th, 2025 and special capital budget meeting held February 11th, 2025 be approved as circulated. Any discussion or comments on any of those minutes? No? All in favor then? That's carried. Thank you. Questions of staff? Councillor Keith?
Yes, Mr. Cairns. I know that with the continued snow that the town is doing their best to have those snow banks, etc., removed where they can, and certainly downtown is looking pretty good. But I notice on the website where it says snow banks, but snow to be cleared, what streets you're working on. How did it get determined? There's like only 2 streets I noticed when I looked the last time as to what the priority is, because I think citizens kind of keep wondering, where's my street? How did you determine 2 at a time? Thanks.
Through your worship. So I will say that perhaps over the long weekend, there's been a bit of a delay in updating that information for sure. To be fair to everybody that's been dealing with snow, just like all the residents that are quite tired of shoveling snow, there's a lot of staff internally and with contractors who have been working long hours over the last few weeks. So there tends to be a bit of a break over the weekends as a recharge, and we'll certainly be re-updating those streets. There should be more than 2 at a time. We are going to be concentrating on removing snow from more streets. You may not see the entire bank disappear as you did at the start of the snow removal, as we make the roads passable and room for some more snow should it unfortunately occur, as we're only in February. So the goal will be to widen the streets, make them passable, open up parking where possible, and to allow for more snow storage. So as we move through that, and we tend to get caught up at that, if the weather cooperates, we'll be concentrating on removing more snow in anticipation of a melt in the spring as well.
My follow-up to that, when the snowplow driver is driving on a street which is pretty narrow, yeah, do they record that somewhere so that maybe that street may get bumped up a little higher in snow removal?
Through your worship. So there's a number of factors that would play into that. Certainly that the plow drivers will communicate with staff and operations. And no one likes to hear this, but the prioritization of streets is based on volume, speed, emergency access, accessibility. All of those factors come into play when staff are determining where to move next to open up streets. So some of them, they are definitely narrow. Staff are well aware of that and are trying to prioritize as much as we can, although there are areas all around town that have narrow streets at the moment. So those that see higher volumes, perhaps bus traffic, that sort of thing that require larger vehicles to pass, will be the first to be widened, and then we'll be moving through the rest of the streets in town.
Councillor Ashford.
I had a question about the safety at the high school with the new build going on right now. There was a question a couple of years ago about the buses turning left out of the bus loop on Joseph Street and then heading out towards 124 there. And it was being difficult and a little bit challenging for them to cross, and a lot of different traffic and things. And I was wondering, now that we're getting regularly updates from Mr. Morrissey via Facebook on what the high school build is looking like right now with the new mega school, where are we at with that in making sure it's a little bit safer around that intersection for the buses and all the kids?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The what I can talk to you about is the site plan and the design for the new school. So how it's going to work when the school is active. So that will be after the current school is torn down and the entranceways are put in. The bus entrance is going to be off of Joseph Street. That's where all the buses are going to be entering into the new school. And there's a loop within the property of the school, and the buses will come in. They will let off their kids or pick up their kids, whichever they're doing, depending on the time of day. And then they will be exiting from the property onto Isabella. At that point, they will be making a left onto Isabella, but then their next intersection is a controlled intersection with lights where they will be able to choose to go south onto Church, north onto Joseph, or straight through on Isabella, with the lights controlling their access to that road.
Any other questions? Councillor McDonald?
Thank you. So we received an email earlier today with the resident concerned about the activity happening at the new school build, and indicating that some of the work was being done outside of hours or on days that were not supposed to be happening. So I'm just wondering if there's anything that can be done or how that is being handled.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the activity outside of the hours allowed by the bylaw has been well documented. There have been occurrences where the construction has been occurring outside of those hours, right from the beginning of the construction of this project. Bylaw enforcement attempted to handle the issue through talking with the contractors, with the principal, and that did not achieve the desired effect. At this time, bylaw has proceeded through the process of laying charges with the contractors and the owners of the property. That doesn't necessarily relieve the incidents from occurring. All that does is provide an avenue to penalize the construction team. there's no other avenue that bylaw has to pursue it other than attempting to influence the individuals through being kind to them, which was attempted first, and talking to them, and then through progressively more severe approach, which is the laying of charges. In this particular case, I haven't heard of a recent incidents of the contractors or workers working outside of the hours. However, we are proceeding through court action currently in this development.
It's good to know. I mean, the email was about some pretty heavy vibration noise too, and you could feel it through the house. Ms. Kruger is on line 2. Did you want her to?
Absolutely, Ms. Kruger, can speak to
Kruger,
the
did you have
issue.
anything you wanted to add?
Through your worship, Chief Thompson did cover most of it, but I did just want to add that we are still actively investigating and monitoring the situation, as we are still hearing some concerns, although not as many as we were previously.
Okay, all right, thank you. Yes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would add to it that the issues of construction outside of the hours is well covered in the bylaw. However, if there is, I heard you mention vibrations, or that's different than what the bylaw covers. I can pursue with the building department how those what opportunities are there. I would suspect there are very little. I am sure that there were pre-survey inspections done on many of the houses around that site before this contract started. That would mainly deal though with any damage to the homes that occurred due to either blasting or drilling or things of that nature. So I will discuss with the building department, find out if there's any other avenues that can be pursued, and provide a email response to council.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Council McCann.
Yeah, so for Chief Thompson then, so I guess many firms would find that the cost of charges and such is just the cost of doing business, and that just, but I would wonder what are the consequences that these charges lead to? What are the fines like, and how stiff are they? It always seems that we get people's attention when we focus on their pocketbook.
Through Mr. Mayor, it's very difficult for staff to determine what a justice would present as a penalty in any case. We know from our experience that justices do extend higher fines when there's health and safety issues. Specifically, we've seen very strong penalties be issued with regards to fire code infractions. When it comes to municipal bylaws, we don't find them as aggressive in monetary penalties. However, then repeat offenses also play into it for them. So this all comes down to the justice who would be issuing any orders or determining any penalties, and what they would be determining as appropriate.
Follow up to that then. So where is the school board on this issue? Do they have, I mean, ultimately they must be the top boss in this case. They're the client. What do they have to say, or do they have anything to say about controlling this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to defer that to Ms. Kruger again, because I know she's intimately knowledgeable on her interactions with both the contractors and the school board.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kruger?
Through your worship, the school board has been made aware of the issues. We haven't really received any feedback in that situation, so we're mainly dealing with the contractor at the moment, as they are the ones that that have violated by creating the noise. But the school board has been made aware of the activities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor McDonald?
Thank you, Worship. I guess just one more for Chief Thompson, and I've noticed that the fire department put out a blast on social media asking residents to help clear out fire hydrants. Maybe you could just make a comment on that just for public knowledge as well.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll mention a few things. Yes, we did put out a blast with regards to fire hydrants, and everyone's maxed out with snow. Everyone's sick and tired of it. No one wants to deal with it anymore, myself included. Today, we were on a response. We've had 4 carbon monoxide calls over the past weekend. In today's response, we had 2 issues. First of all, the house that had the carbon monoxide situation didn't have anywhere left to put their snow, and they actually blew it up against the side of their house. They had completely covered their gas meter, and they completely covered their exhaust from their furnace, creating for themselves an incredibly dangerous situation for carbon monoxide poisoning. It didn't get that far, thank goodness, and we were able to clean it out and educate these particular property owners. And moving forward, they understand their ways, and hopefully by me talking about this tonight, maybe other people who weren't aware that that was a problem will also know. At the same time, we of course, whenever we go to any call, we're always trying to identify exactly where the hydrants are closest to us and how we would conduct operations. The closest hydrant in this particular call was about 5 houses up the street. It was on Gibson Street. And when the crews went up to determine if it was accessible or not, they actually found that the homeowner who had the hydrant in front of them had blown all the snow from their driveway and from the boulevard in front of their property on top of the hydrant. And this necessitated, it took the fire department more than 5 minutes to dig that particular hydrant out. So that goes beyond just not clearing a hydrant near you. This was a situation where someone actively covered a hydrant in their neighborhood. And that doesn't only endanger their property and their lives, but it endangers their whole neighborhood. So I would encourage everyone to pay attention to the hydrants near you. We all think it'll never happen to us. And I've spoken to many household owners after an incident, and that's what they say to me. I didn't think it would ever happen to me. And these situations sometimes do. So although we're all sick and tired of snow and shoveling snow and having plow operators push it back into our driveways, that's what we need to do. And we need to get out there and help our neighbors and take the 5 minutes that it takes to shovel out the hydrant. Please do that for your neighborhood and the health of your community. It makes us all stronger as a community when we look after each other.
So I'm going to circle back around to snow clearing in the streets and that sort of thing. So one of the things I try to do in front of my house, because I have 2 catch drains or whatever in front of the property, is to try and make sure they're cleared. Well, because of the amount of snow we've had and it got shoved over that, I couldn't do that. So when they did clear some snow, it's now ice, about so thick. So those 2 drains are extremely important for that street, plus the 2 across the road. And I'm hoping that we're monitoring where ponding can happen and when it does start to melt, because if we've got those frozen drains, I know I'm not going to be able to chip them out to get them open. So it's going to take some machinery to get them open. And I'm sure it's not only River Street that's going to have an issue with the melt when it happens. So do we have a plan, okay, to make sure that these ponding areas where it can happen, that they are going to be cleared out so the water can go away instead of ponding?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the short answer is yes. It really is weather dependent though, too. So how that plan unfolds,
Yeah,
as you
fair enough.
mentioned. So the snow removal is part of that.
Yeah.
Removing snow strategically to make the road safe, but also in anticipation of the snow leaving. And we're hopeful that that doesn't happen quickly. We will be, we constantly monitor weather. Trust me, we get more weather forecasts than any of us want to see in a winter coming in. So we'll have an idea at least of when the warming trend is arriving. In the short term, it's supposed to warm up on the weekend, maybe not quite to melting point, but staff, we are well aware of the more problematic areas for drainage in town. We have, kind of the frequent flyer catch basins that cause issues each spring and often in heavy downpours as well. So they're well mapped. We can locate them. But this snow removal process is going to aid in that because, as you said, if it's buried under ice on top of 6 feet of snow, that's a little bit more problematic. So the snow removal is not only to give us more room, make the road safer, but also in anticipation of being able to deal with the melt when it does inevitably happen. So we do have appropriate equipment to help us with all of those challenges.
Good, thank you. All right, correspondence, Ms. Jones. There is no correspondence, that's right. Okay. Deputations. So we do have a deputation tonight. We have Diana Clement, Director of Parry Sound Forest School, with an update. Welcome. Okay, all right.
Could you use the microphone, please, ma'am? I do not have, my presentation isn't compatible for the software available this evening. I have it on my computer, but if I can't plug my computer in, I won't be able to do this tonight. I can just.
I was going to suggest maybe while you're here, you could sort of bring us up to date on your school and how the kids are benefiting. I hear good things. So maybe you could take this opportunity, make your trip worthwhile and tell us more about what's happening.
Well, I know that I'm not allowed to do another deputation unless it has new content in it. And I would prefer to wait and actually have a proper presentation than just to talk, if that's okay. So I'll just have to.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, because I think you've got stuff you want to show us.
I do, and I
Yeah.
took a lot of time to make the presentation.
right.
So I'm not allowed to plug my computer into this, right?
I don't know.
I think technically it won't work then for the live streaming for the public.
Okay.
So that computer is part of the
Network?
network, the system. And so that's why you can't use your own computer.
Okay, I'll.
So we'll work with you, Diana, and you can let me know which meeting you want to present at the next time and make sure we've got something that is compatible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank
Sorry
you.
to take up your time this
No,
evening.
no. Thank you for coming in. Okay, reports. We'll start with Councillor McDonald tonight.
Thank you, Your Worship. Couple things. February 11th, attended a special meeting of council for the 2025 budget overview and a draft capital budget. And on February the 12th, attended the Downtown Business Association board meeting. New beautification plan was unveiled, which looks great. There was talk regarding some of the events upcoming for 2025, including the return of Maple Fest in the spring. And 2025 budget was approved. And that is the end of my report.
Thank you. Councillor McCann?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and fellow councillors, staff and public. My report is short. I too attended the special budget meeting last week here in council chambers to discuss the capital budget. And for all those wondering or asking, of course, we'll be handling the operating budget in a few weeks' time. Only other thing I would like to mention is extend a round of applause out to Public Works for their effort in clearing all the snow that we've been getting. It seems like we've had winter rolled into about 3 or 4 weeks here. And so Public Works deserves a big round of applause. We talked earlier today about the importance of clearing your vents around your home. Also equally important, I still see people driving around looking through peepholes on their windshield from time to time. Clear your vehicles off completely. That's the law. You could be fined $110 if the OPP stop you for that. You want to be able to see everything around you, especially in the wintertime. So please clean your vehicles properly and drive safe out there. And thank you. And that's my report.
Thank you. Councillor Bileski?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a very, very short report. I too attended the budget meeting on February the 11th for the capital budget. And yes, we've had enough snow, and that's my report.
Thank you. Councillor Ashford?
Thank you. First thing I want to mention is the second year in a row I'm mentioning this is our Stocky Center just does a great job of getting programs and things together in the winter. And again, year 2, my girls went to the performance for Frozen, where it seems like every girl in the Parry Sound District, little girl, was there wearing a Frozen dress. And it was just amazing. Again, you see all those businesses in the middle of February were just packed full of folks needing to get food on their way. People were coming from as far as the city. So it was a great little opportunity again. And I would say that my girls did not seem to even know they'd been to the exact same thing the year before. So it was right on target for their audience. There was also a pool committee meeting since the last council meeting. And the big update there, I think, with the theme of worrying about the snow and being tired of it this night, is there's a roof up there right now. They got the wooden portion of the roof up. And the first thing that started to happen to me was I was worried if that snow's going to cave that roof in. I hope they're up there shoveling it down and making sure it's all ready. But part of the update was the steel is coming. So they should be plugging away at that in the next couple of weeks or month to get the rest of the roof all on there. Another meeting that kind of happened with a lot of different agencies in town is we've had a bit, it was supposed to be held at the Stocky, but because of the snowstorm, they moved to online. But our Ontario Health team in our community is progressing quite well, and all the different signatories are getting through. They had lawyers and different things speaking and talking about how to share liability and how all that works together as all the different parts of our health system for the wellness and health and wellness of Parry Sounders is kind of coming together into that Ontario Health team. So keep paying attention to that and seeing how things are going to be more efficient and better for all of us. And then finally, this past weekend with Family Day, we had quite a few festivities in town, and I did get a couple messages wondering if things were going to be canceled because of the snow, and it was a bit thinner crowd than normal, again with our theme of maybe being a little tired of snow right now. But the fireworks, it was like the storms were parted their way and made it was a perfectly clear sky, and you're able to see them, and it was a great little show for the fireworks. And then finally, I just want to make the public aware, a young lady in our community was diagnosed with cancer this past year, and she has been undergoing treatment at Sick Kids in Toronto and staying with family down there. But things have been quite tight for her and her family as they're trying to work through this, because as people know, when you're down at those things are paid for. We do have healthcare in our province, but at the same time, there's so many expenses that you don't think about until you're down there. And we got Ronald McDonald House that helps and all these different organizations, but there's been a few different community initiatives and a few on the go that are coming up. But one of them right now, there's an online auction on Facebook. It's called Erica's Army online auction. So take a look. There's quite a few donations from different groups, and I like a nice silent auction or online auction because you end up getting a deal on some things sometimes. So get out there and take a look. But at the same time, if you're gonna, one thing I started doing, if you're gonna buy the thing anyways, like a Trapper's gift card, you know, if you're going to Trapper's no matter what, I think most of us will at some point, just bid full price on the thing and see if you can get somebody to go over, because you're going to be spending that money sooner or later anyways. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Councillor Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors, staff, and the public. I attended the special council's meeting for the capital budget, as well as my condolences go out to Wendell Morgan's family. Certainly, I attended the celebration of life, and certainly, and listening to that celebration, it really confirmed the impact that he has had on our community. So my condolences do go out there. I also was involved in the Snow Fest, which certainly reflected also not only that we got lots of snow, but the hard work of Jamie Young and April McNamara, the staff, the number of volunteers, the fire department, Downtown Business Association, all contribute to making it happen. And it was a really a lot of effort put in there. And I also want to throw out right now, while I think about it, was not only at Kinsman Park having the ice rink, also having that acrylic ice pad out there, I think was a really good idea for this year. I attended the pancake breakfast to contribute to that fundraiser for the music, the high school music students, and also the magician show in the afternoon certainly showed me the type of thing that young people are interested in. And it's always good to see what's happening one year and what changes we can make for another year. The fireworks certainly were quite wonderful. I really appreciated them. It seems to me that fireworks never seem long enough, although my fingers were kind of cold. I felt, because I missed my mittens. Needless to say, I thought, so, yeah, when you miss your mittens, I'm telling you, your fingers get cold pretty quick if you're trying to take a picture besides. But I have to say, some of those fireworks, it's just amazing how they have developed over the years. The designs within the bursts, such creativity. I just thought it was really wonderful. And then on Monday, I helped out with passing out the hamburgers and hot dogs for the hungry souls. And I know that I was but one of them at the mayor's barbecue. And so there was a lot of volunteering going on. Tim Hortons being there also. There just was lots of volunteer, lots of energy in the Bobby York Community Center. And I only think it just shows that we are really a community of caring and sharing. And it was lovely, that snow event. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, staff, and public, February 11th, the capital budget's been mentioned. February 12th was the Recreation and Cultural Center meeting. And as Councillor Asher said, the construction of the building is certainly moving along. Had great feedback from the public in the area on, they're starting to get really excited as the building is moving along. And I really have to commend the workers for dealing with the weather that we've been having and moving that project along the way they have. It's they've got to be tough. February 13th was the District Social Services Board meeting. The budget was passed of a 3.95% increase. And with that, it seems to be that there's a little more downloading happening, which means that reflects on the municipal taxpayer. And you should have got your report, right? Okay, good. February 15th to 17th, Snowfest. I'd really like to thank staff and the volunteers for all their efforts. Well done. 17th was the barbecue and free skate at the BOCC, and I'd like to thank Jamie Young and Kevin and the staff of the BOCC for their support for the event. I'd also like to thank Tim Hortons and No Frills for their support. And I also have to thank Councillor Borneman and Councillor Bonnie Keith and School Board Trustee Howard Wesley for volunteering to help with the barbecue. And notice Tom Morrissey wandering around, and we have to thank Tom for taking pictures throughout the weekend. So hopefully there'll be pictures for Rebecca when the levee's planned for next year. Anyway, it was a good event, great turnout, people skating upstairs, playing games and having family time. And I didn't realize until somebody mentioned it that this was we've been doing this for 11 years. And now, mind you, there was a little bit of a hiatus during COVID, but during COVID, what I did was I went out and bought some gift certificates, and we did a scavenger hunt. And so people were social distancing and that sort of thing, so it was easy to do, but something was happening to create family involvement. So anyway, and thank you everyone that came out to enjoy the events. I'd also at this time like to send my condolences or express my condolences to the Morgan family as well. That's my report. On with the agenda. Item 921. Moved by Councillor McDonald, second by Councillor McCann. The council receives the Manager of Water Systems report on outcomes of the 2024 Veolia Ultrification Users Group Conference held in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, September 22nd to the 24th, 2024. Mr. Hall, did you want to add anything? I mean, you're not here that often, and maybe the public might want to just say hello. I don't even know whether I pronounced that right.
Yeah, it is a bit of a tricky one. But through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for allowing me to attend the conference. I say conference, but it really is a users group conference. Everyone that operates an ultrafiltration membrane plant attends these if they can, and it's highly beneficial. But yeah, it's Veolia. That's the yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hall? Councillor Ashford.
Not to put you on the spot, but are our membranes in trouble? In the sense that there's a couple mentions of getting near the end of the life and those kind of things. Is this an opportunity when you're at these to maybe source like secondhand ones, or how does it work as far as the end of life importance in addressing that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we're nearing the end of life for our membranes. We're on second generation now. 10 to 12 years is a good life expectancy from them. So we are getting there. And one of the assessments this year was on membrane replacement and upgrade planning. There are strategies, different strategies for replacement. Used ones are not recommended. And the process of how you replace them as well is explained. There are different ways to do it, but full replacement is usually the best way to do that.
Councillor Keith and then Councillor McCann.
Thank you. So just a quick question. When we know the lifetime is coming to an end, is that planned for the budget? Another line item? Is that to happen soon?
Yes, I think because we have known the life expectancy of the membranes, it's been in capital budget for years in planning. But I think Director of Finance could elaborate on that.
through you, Mr. Mayor, we plan for life cycle replacement through our asset management planning and replacement costs based on historical costs and the age of the assets. So within that plan, long-term planning.
Follow up. So what I'm hearing is that we should not be getting in panic city. This is all planned for, so things should roll into place. Right?
Yeah, yes, through each year through our water and wastewater rates, we also plan for capital expenditures. So the base charge goes towards capital. So over the long term, we're contributing to a capital reserve and then spending as required. That's how that works.
Thank you. Council McCann?
So thank you for coming this evening. With regard to the plant, I recall the grand opening and I was amazed at the technology back then. And I hate to think of how many years ago that was. But when you talk about a full replacement, is there any kind of an interruption in service? I know that there are water reserves. Does that affect the supply for any length of time to the town?
For you, Mr. Mayor. Good question. Yes, when we do go to do the replacement, we do have to plan for that because it is a staged process where the plant will be offline for a specific period of time until that work is done, and we do have to rely on our storage.
So a reminder to folks to keep their ears open so they'll know when to fill up their bathtubs then. Thanks.
Any other questions? Nope. Thank you. Yeah. All in favor? Thanks. Carried. Oops. Moved by Councillor McCann, seconded by Councillor McDonald. Council accepts the quote from Cubics for the Del Evo International D6 Street Sweeper in the amount of $461,226.56, excluding taxes. Mr. Bonanza, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, we're just looking at getting a jump on it before the spring season and getting our new purchase on our sweeper because our old one needs some work, and I'd rather save some money for the taxpayers and do this purchase early. So this new machine is state of the art. It should cut down. It has negative pressure. It's a mechanical sweeper with negative pressure, so it should help us to completely minimize our dust while we're sweeping around town.
Okay, good. Any questions? Councilor Boleski?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of things. The Cubics, is that the people that sold us our little van, our little truck, a little electric truck? Is that the same company?
To you, Mr. Mayor, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I support this, but I guess my issue with it is we're approving something that on a budget we haven't approved yet. 2025 capital budget, we have not approved the 2025 capital budget yet. My knowledge. We looked at it last week and accepted it, but the budget isn't finalized yet, is it?
The capital budget, no, the budget's not finalized yet.
Yeah, so we're committing dollars to, and there's 2 or 3 issues in this recommendations tonight. We're committing dollars to money we really don't have yet. Unless
I guess my question would then be to staff, is this coming from reserves to pay for this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So a portion of it is funded from reserves and a portion of it is funded from property taxation within the recommended capital budget.
Okay.
But we do have budget controls, financial policy that allows for purchases to be approved by council that are not yet budgeted or outside of the budget, as long as there's a resolution. So that is just a requirement. If council wanted to go ahead with this, then they could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That way we can get ahead of purchasing so that we're not late. Mr. Kearns.
One more, your worship, if I may.
Mr. Kearns has a response to your.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, thank you, your worship. I just wanted to add, staff did discuss this. We've discussed this extensively. And the reason that we're coming with this at this point is the dollar values required to repair, to actually get the existing sweeper to a point where we can use it are tens of thousands of dollars. They're not minor, and they will not add any value to that particular piece of equipment. So that's the reason that we've come with this recommendation ahead of, or as an early purchase ahead of budget approval.
Do you have another question?
Yes, thank you, Richard. No, just more on that in a way. I'm just, and as I said, I'll support it. I know it has to be done. I've got a little bit of an issue with the fact that we're still spending or committing capital budget money to a budget that we haven't approved yet. What if we get into the operation money and council decides that we've got to start cutting? Now this guarantees that this is going to stay there. We can't cut it, but we've limited, we've committed that to it. Ms. Phillips, I guess, is this proper budgeting? Is this proper way of doing things? That's what I'm saying.
So council has a policy where they've already committed to provide 1.8% levy towards infrastructure funding. So at this point, what's in the recommended budget is only the 1.8% per council's policy. So conceivably, staff would do whatever is required within the operating budget to get to where council's comfortable. And it wouldn't really be recommended that council revise the capital budget to provide less funding towards capital projects, but that's just kind of my thought process and logic behind that portion of it.
Just one more, if I may, your worship. And I understand, I'm just making sure we're doing things the way we're supposed to do them, and because the next one coming up is a $600,000 unit that's saying exactly the same thing, that we're going to take it out of the 2025 capital budget, which hasn't been approved yet. That's my issue. Are we doing proper budgeting here, and we got one further that comes up a little bit later in this, that's going to be money taken out of the 2025 operational budget. We haven't even seen the operational budget yet. Is this proper bookkeeping? That's all I'm saying.
And I know Mr. Kearns had an answer for something or wanted to respond to something, but I think we've got an overlying comment from Councillor Boleski, and I think Ms. Phillips has to answer that one, I guess.
Well, I guess I'm not really sure how to answer that other than it's up to council whether they wish to proceed with those things or not. We do have the money set aside for the purposes of these things, but and it's within policy to do so if council approves and chooses to. The policy for the municipal assistance program, it would still come forward as part of the budget. So I guess it would be finalized at that time if council agreed with the changes in policies that happened tonight as a kind of a like a final, final steps to approving the budget. It would still be authorized at that time. But.
Okay. Mr. Harris has a response. Mr. Kearns has a response. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here.
This will be my last one.
Well, no, but what I'd like is the answer to your last question that everybody's commented on before we jump to another one. Okay.
Through the mayor, I'd just add that, I think technically Councillor Pileski's correct. I mean, the budget hasn't been approved, but I think the amounts that we're referring to in the context, I think the capital budget was maybe 15 million or so. And so in that context, we do have reserves for much of the set aside. And there was nothing at last week's meeting on the capital budget that would suggest anything was going to be changed. There were no concerns raised. So in that context, I think this is low risk that we're going to have to cut these projects to make the operating budget balance. But I think technically, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. And sometimes there's reasons that you need to, you want to get a jump on approving something to get, there's a long lead time and you need the product, or you want to get the project started, or you got to issue tenders. So I think in some cases it does make sense, but technically I agree.
Mr. Kearns?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I would also agree with what Mr. Harris said. We certainly don't want to put our finance department on the spot by doing this. This isn't our preferred method. Just relating back to Mr. Hall's report, when we talked, there were questions about replacing the membranes in the plant. When we're dealing with critical infrastructure like that, as Ms. Phillips said, we have life cycle management. So we know that by year 12, for instance, we're not comfortable with pushing that to year 13, year 14, year 15 to try and squeeze every dollar we can. Now in operations, we tend to look at our vehicles and we'll do an assessment if they're at life cycle or close to, can we get more lifespan out of this without having a critical health impact as water would, for instance. So sometimes perhaps we shoot ourselves in the foot a little bit, pushing the equipment as further than perhaps we would otherwise, trying to squeeze the best value out of the equipment. So part of that with this sweeper, we thought perhaps we could get more time out of it. Looking into it a little bit more, staff have done a further assessment, and there's some rather major components that require replacement, not repair. And I think as Councillor Boleski mentioned, the next item is a plow truck. And as Mr. Harris alluded to, that one is a time crunch. Unfortunately, ordering equipment now in that type of equipment is almost a year out if we're lucky. So that's the intention of trying to do that. We're trying to receive delivery of the equipment when we need it without getting into a situation with our existing equipment where we have a complete breakdown and can't provide the expected level of service. So sorry, I just wanted to add that.
No, and that's fine. That's fine. Mr. Bonanza?
No, just to add to Mr. Kearns as well through you. Just some real world stuff that happened over the weekend. That truck that we're looking at replacing is down right now. We've had multiple breakdowns to its age. So just to add to that as well.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Boleski, you had one more thing you wanted to add.
I've added a couple to it now, but I'll do them real fast. Thank you. The membranes, the water plant don't come out of taxpayers' money. They're paid for through the water money. So that money's already, I realize, is already put away for that. So it's not, it doesn't come to budget to be spent. Those membranes are part of replacement. Mr. Harris and I have had discussions many times. I said to him, why can't we get this stuff out in advance and get these things out? And we've agreed that, we want to get it out sooner. I'm just, my issue here is about not spending the money or not buying the thing. As I said, that's fine. I agree with everything. Other than are we doing the right thing by spending money that's not in the capital budget yet? Are we spending the capital budget that has not been approved yet? That's my only issue.
Okay.
And if Ms. Phillips says that we're fine, then I'm fine.
Okay. I believe her.
Okay.
Yep.
And I will too. Yeah, fine.
I have
Thank you, Your Worship.
You're welcome. I have Councillor Keith and then Councillor McCann.
Thank you. I have a couple questions there, Mr. Bonanza. I'm wondering, first of all, because I noticed over time, we have sold equipment and through the company that we did this canoe procurement group, and we've sold equipment. Do we keep a history of whatever we've sold and whatever the price was that we received for it? Do we have some sort of history there so we can see what value we're getting back? Because I know in the past, it seemed to me we were just giving things away and we weren't getting anything. So do we have some sort of record there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe so. I'm going to defer to Ms. Phillips as well.
So through Mr. Mayor, so we each year have to recognize a gain or loss on equipment depending on what we get for the trade-in or whatever it is. So we can find that information. But
So basically, I just wanted to know, do we keep a history of it so we can see? So do folks see that over time compared to, like I said before, it seemed to me we were total loss because we're just giving it away as a good neighbor, shall we say?
Mhm. So in budgeting, we budget for kind of the net cost. So sometimes staff will factor in like trade-in value on what they think they require for the new equipment. But I guess we don't keep an ongoing tally, but we do have records of any of those sales and of equipment. Yeah.
Thank you, but I have one other question. This piece of equipment, and I see the necessity of us doing it tonight and getting on with it, but I understood with this new piece of equipment, it's supposed to be able to work in somewhat colder weather, is that correct? And if so, what do we really mean? Does that mean that we could start, if the snow all melted, lucky us, you could actually start cleaning in, shall we say, late April to whatever in October if there was no snow?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that's correct. So this new sweeper has negative pressure that runs through it to capture the dust that's being swept up. So you don't have to use water. So this will allow us to use the sweeper and do sweeping operations in negative temperature. So that will expand our sweeping season, weather dependent, of course.
Thank you. And my last question had to be with, I know in the past, we've heard before how much advance time we need to have so that we get a piece of an equipment. So it seems to me it's being made piece by piece, but in any event, what is the anticipated time if it's approved tonight and you get to ordering, what is the hoped for date of arrival?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I believe they already have the stock in place, so that would be within a month we'd have it. So we'd have it before the sweeping season, the piece of equipment. Councilor Camp.
Oh, I'm hopeful the snow will be gone in 2 or 3 weeks, so. It seems to me, Mr. Mayor, you made a comment earlier that this seems like something rather familiar, that a few years ago, there was some mechanism that we talked about or agreed upon that allowed us to spend money before the budget was approved. That's a comment or a question, but adding to that, the budget notwithstanding, does the asset management not account for the money for this well in advance that we know this is coming up?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the sweeper is a bit of a service level increase. So the this is the one that has that, right? It's a different equipment. So the portion that is the service level increase is funded from taxation, but the portion that would have been a replacement value, yes, we would have had that put away for this purpose. And for the snow plow, we would plan for replacement, like through life cycle and asset management and contributions to our reserve that we do each year through the capital budget. So we do contribute to the fleet reserve for that each year for life cycle replacements. Yeah.
So my first comment, was there some mechanism in place that allows us to, freely I guess sort of in an untethered manner, spend money before we've actually approved the budget?
So through a council policy for budget and financial controls, it says that if there is like spending required before budget approval, that director has to come forward to council with a report and request that approval through resolution at council meeting. So that's why it's before council tonight. So without this approval, they wouldn't be able to go ahead with it until the budget estimates are set. So that is a council policy by bylaw. So that's the procedure that's been identified.
Thank you.
We're good? Okay. All in favor?
Carrie, thank you.
Hopefully with this one, all the questions have been out of the way on the last one.
We can do it all over.
Moved by Councillor Keith and second by Councillor Ashford. The council accepts the quote from Gin Core Trucks and Curry Truck Center to purchase a 7-ton truck in the amount of $463,840, complete with plow, harness, and dump body, including the underbody plow, and to trade in the 2014 7-ton Western Star for $21,000 for a net price of $442,840. Another thing I will ask is the underbody plow something new?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, it's, we've used this as the first year using it this year on the truck that we
Okay.
purchased before.
Okay.
We've been using it. It's been working very well. So.
Good. Okay. But up until that one, we hadn't had them before.
No,
Right, no.
no.
Okay.
Yeah, this is our first winter
Yeah.
using that.
Okay, good. Councillor Gillespie.
Just one question. I was speaking to Mr. Kearns last week. Have you figured a way yet to be able to get the underbody to slide sideways for high winging?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We've been actually talking with Gin Core with this new truck to get it shifted a little bit to help us with that. So they're going to look at the current unit we have now. So.
I see.
Yep.
That's
Okay.
fine. Thank you.
Councillor Ashford.
My question is a little less technical than Councillor Berleski, but I was just Googling what this would look like, and there's a whole lot of variations. Is this just gonna look like one of our town plows?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you come up to the shop and looked at the one we purchased last year, it's going to be pretty well identical.
Thank you.
Anything further? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Ashford, second by Councillor Gillespie. The Council Corporation of Town of Parry Sound approved the municipal assistance program attached as Schedule A. Any discussion on this? Ms. McNamara, you're on the line. Is there anything you wanted to add to this?
Through you, your worship, it is pretty clear in the report, but as directed by council back in 2024 at the deliberations for the municipal assistance program, council was wishing for the budget allocation to be removed for the not-for-profit as well as the economic development agencies. Staff actually saw through research of municipalities, the likes of Cobourg, Township of Georgian Bays, Township of Severn, municipality Gananoque, and actually the recently approved grant program for the city of Aurelia. Staff saw this as an opportunity to further support council's strategic direction, to support event facilitation in the community, and a new category has been added to this program for grants for not-for-profits to apply for grants to assist with the expenses for special events that they're offering to the community. So this is looking to enhance the grassroots movement that is getting into the business more frequently now of offering special events, and again is supporting council's key strategic initiatives. Staff is not obtuse to the conversation that was happening earlier with regard to budget allocation. And yes, you will see a significant budget increase from previous years. Now, the reality is that dollar figure is up to council. And if that $30,000 is not palatable, during operating budget deliberations, it is up to council to reduce that number, and staff will work with what remains. The intent of bringing this forward was to get ahead of the game. Once budget is approved, we can release this grant program because these not-for-profit organizations tend to rely on this funding to bring programming to the town of Parry Sound.
Exactly. Any questions for Ms. McNamara? Councillor Keith?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Ms. McNamara. I do have one question, and I like the idea of the festival and events section that we have here. but just hypothetically, if there's the granting, shall we say, of $5,000 for the event to occur, because I assume there's a contract people sign. And so in any event, the festival event, shall we say, does not happen. Is there a mechanism so that money can be returned? How does that work in that kind of a case?
Through your worship, no different than the existing municipal assistance program. If the organization doesn't fulfill the obligations of the grant, they are expected to return those said funds to the town of Parry Sound.
And to date, have we ever had issues with that, or have things worked fairly smoothly?
In my 15 years of administering the program on behalf of the town of Parry Sound, we have yet to experience any kind of difficulty.
Thank you.
Anything further? Councillor McDonald?
Yes, thank you, Worship. Ms. McNamara, will there be communications sent out that will be able to promote this new opportunity for the not-for-profit groups to take advantage of the grant opportunities for the funding?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, once council has had the opportunity to approve the 2025 operating budget, staff will absolutely be contacting all previous grant applications as well. We will be engaging in our in a good marketing plan to let all of the registered not-for-profits know that this is what's going on. These are the changes, and to please stay tuned. There has been a lot of conversation that I've had with existing not-for-profits that run events. They are quite excited to hear this was coming to council for council consideration, and they're really looking forward to accessing some funds to enhance existing events that are taking place in the town of Parry Sound.
Yes, I think it'll open up some more opportunities for events, so well done.
We're good? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Blaski, second by Councillor Ashford. The Council of the Town of Parry Sound waives the procurement bylaw for the Big Sound Marina operating RFP to allow circulation of the RFP not through bids and tenders, but through posting on the town's website, direct circulation to proponents who have inquired with interest, and through circulation through Boating Ontario. Chief Thompson, was there anything you wanted to add to this one?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't think I have anything to add. Most of the information is in the report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yep. Any questions? Councillor Ashford?
I just wanted to be clear on it. It seemed in one part that it said we would not be putting it on the normal bids and tenders, but then in another spot it said we would be doing this in addition to the normal bids and tenders. So if we're not putting on bids and tenders, just why would we not want to cast the net as wide as possible?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it will not be on, if this resolution is passed, it will not be on bids and tenders. It will only be through the means that are identified in this. I think I will pass over the answer for why that is to Ms. Phillips, because it has more to do with procurement processing.
So in order for competitors to access the bids on bids and tenders, they have to pay like a subscription or pay to access it. And if we select to go with only electronic bidding, then we can't accept both methods to keep the process completely fair. Because online it goes by the web clock, and there's just technical reasons why we can only do one or electronic only, or the other way.
Yep, follow up. Yep.
If it doesn't turn out great, or we feel like maybe we could get a better deal, would it prevent us from then putting it up on the bids and tenders after?
So if it were not successful, we could always re-advertise and choose to do it with a different method.
And as a follow-up to that, your worship, the RFP as it stands right now clearly indicates that we can accept none of the bids that are submitted and do something else.
Okay. Thanks. Councillor Keith?
Yes, thank you. If this is passed tonight, Mr. Thompson, I'm wondering what would be the closing date for the RFP? Do you have an estimated date?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the closing date will be, it's either April 4th or April 6th. I can't remember right off the top of my head, but it's one of those two dates. And it's relatively important that a decision is made tonight, in the sense that to circulate it through Voting Ontario, I need to give them the go ahead tomorrow for their circulation purposes. If it's not tomorrow, then it will be put off for another month until their next newsletter and their next blast out to their membership, which starts pushing it into the boating season, which is a concern for marina operators to be able to have the time to actually put in the efforts to create a bid.
Councillor McCann?
Certainly have to aim your advertising for where your market is. Just to remind the public and to be clear, as council decided last year, this is only with regards to managing the Big Sound Marina. This is not attached to the town dock this time around.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is absolutely correct. This RFP is only for the management and the operation of Big Sound Marina.
Thank you.
Anything further? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Valesky, seconded by Councillor Ashford. Council of the Corporation of Town of Parry Sound hereby supports Resolution 2025-0010 passed by the Town of Halton Hills, rejecting any efforts by President Trump or any others to undermine the sovereignty of Canada, and stand united with provincial and federal governments for a Canada that remains strong, free, independent, and characterized by peace, order, and good government. And that further, that this resolution be sent to the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Minister of Foreign Affairs Melanie Joly, MP Scott Aitchison, Premier Doug Ford, Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade Vic Fideli, MPP Graydon Smith, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and the Town of Halton Hills. Any discussion? No? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Ashford, seconded by Councillor Valesky. Whereas United States President Donald Trump issued executive orders to impose tariffs on imports from Canada effective March 12, 2025, and whereas these tariffs will have a significant detrimental impact on the economic stability in both countries, and whereas federal and provincial leaders are encouraging Canadians to buy Canadian, and whereas municipalities have significant purchasing power through capital and infrastructure programs, and whereas according to data from the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, municipalities are expected to spend $250 to $290 billion on infrastructure in the next 10 years. And whereas municipalities have traditionally been prevented by trade agreements and legislation from giving preference to the purchase of Canadian products and services, and whereas municipalities can assist in the efforts to combat tariffs and support businesses in the procurement for capital and infrastructure programs, now therefore be it resolved, Council of the Corporation of the Town of Parry Sound endorses the federal and provincial call to action to buy Canadian where and when possible, and that the federal and provincial governments work with municipalities on measures to protect Canadian consumers and businesses, and that Council call on the federal and provincial governments to remove any impediments to municipalities preferring to engage Canadian companies from capital projects and supplies when appropriate and feasible, and that this resolution be forwarded to the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Premier Doug Ford, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and all Ontario municipalities. Discussion? All in favor? Oh, Councillor Valesky?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was glad to see that the way they had there had been worded that the council call on federal and provincial government to remove any impediments to municipalities referring to engage Canadian companies for capital projects and supplies when appropriate and feasible. I have found through the years that, and when you say we have to buy Canadian or we have to buy Ontario or we have to buy local, the prices tend to increase because they know there's no competition. So I just wanted to comment that they did put in here where appropriate and feasible, that you can buy otherwise if the price is right. Thank you.
Okay. Anything further? All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Ashford. Whereas tariffs and trade disruptions have the potential to seriously harm Ontario's economy with significant impacts on communities. And whereas the town of Parry Sound as an Ontario municipality wants to do its part. Now therefore, to support broader federal and provincial efforts, the town of Parry Sound Council endorses the Association of Municipalities of Ontario work, highlighting Ontario municipalities committed to playing our part in protecting our shared prosperity in Ontario and Canada by writing the Prime Minister, the Premier of Ontario, the federal and provincial opposition leaders in early December 2024, reaffirming and strengthening this commitment through a statement issued by AMO's Board of Directors in January, noting that changes in U.S. immigration and social policy could trigger migration and massive implications for municipal resources, calling on the Ontario government to work with AMO to effectively harness municipal procurement as a tool in federal and provincial tariff responses, and furthermore that the town of Parry Sound Council supports AMO's advocacy efforts for federal and provincial investments to mitigate cost escalations on municipal capital projects to continue to ensure continuity for the construction sector and related industries, increase in repair social housing stock in the face of excess residential construction capacity and growing housing need, and offset broader fiscal impacts on the municipal sector of potential economic slowdown, and further that this resolution be forwarded to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. Any discussion on that one? All in favor then? And that's carried. Thank you. There. Okay. Moved by Councillor McDonald, second by Councillor McCann, whereas amyloidosis is a group of diseases that occurs when an abnormal protein known as amyloid builds up in the tissues and organs of a body, and if left untreated can result in organ failure and can be fatal. And whereas amyloidosis can mimic the signs and symptoms of more common medical conditions, and the disease can be challenging to diagnose. And whereas amyloidosis often affects people who are older or middle-aged, however, younger people have been diagnosed with this disease. And whereas some of the signs and symptoms of amyloidosis can include shortness of breath, weight loss, fatigue, swelling in the ankles and legs, numbness in the hands and feet, foamy urine, carpal tunnel syndrome, bruising around the eyes, and a enlarged tongue. And whereas early diagnosis can lead to better outcomes for both patients and their families, whereas raising awareness about all the amyloidosis diseases, including hereditary and non-hereditary forms of the disease, can contribute to building of healthier communities across Canada. Now, therefore, the Council of the Corporation, the Town of Parry Sound hereby proclaims March 2025 is Amyloidosis Awareness Month, a month dedicated to raising awareness, funding research, and supporting those living with amyloidosis and their loved ones. Discussion. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Moved by Councilor McDonald, second by Councilor McCann. Notwithstanding council's policy on fees and charges, council waives the fees in the amount of $244.08 for the provincial all candidates meeting to be held Tuesday, February 25th, 2025 at the Bobby Orr Community Center from 6:30 PM to 8:30 PM. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Moved by Councilor McCann, second by Councilor McDonald, the bylaw number 2025-7475 being a bylaw to set tax ratios for municipal purposes for the year 2025 be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Councilor McDonald, second by Councilor McCann, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Mr. Beaumont, you've been sitting there so patiently in the back room there now, and Mr. Hall had his turn at the microphone, so we'll invite you to come up, and Mr. Bonazza did tonight too, so and just give us a quick overview of this, even though I know we do it every year.
Well, through you, worship, again, I'm here to do the set the tax ratios for the 2025 taxation year. And basically what the ratios do as part of our budget process that Ms. Phillips uses to set our tax rates. Again, in the report, you'll see that the ratios, I recommend that we keep them the same. If we have to change any of the ratios, we have to move them towards the residential ratio, which makes the shift and puts more pressure on the residential tax rates. But there is something new this year that I'll bring to council's attention. It's the province has set up they've implemented a new subclass in the industrial class, and it's the aggregate extraction class. And basically what the province has done, there was petition from a lot of aggregate pit owners in southwestern Ontario that they wanted some kind of break. So what the province has done is set up a new subclass. They've reduced the education rate that they'll be paying. They've already set that rate, and they've set the ratio for this year for this new class. So everything's all set in stone that way. We just have to go through our tax rate process, and we'll generate a new tax rate for this subclass. Just to let you know, we only have one property in town that has any kind of this new class in it, and the assessed value is only $8,500. So the reduction that they would have been paying from the industrial to this new class will be minimal.
Okay. Anything further? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councilor McDonald, second by Councilor McCann, that bylaw number 2025-7476 being a bylaw to establish an administrative penalty system in the town of Parry Sound be considered as read a first time. All in favor? It's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings, and that's carried. Moved by Councilor McCann, seconded by Councilor McDonald, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Ms. Kruger, anything you want to add to what you have compiled here?
Through your worship, I can give a quick overview. So the bylaw before you is an administrative penalty systems bylaw that we are hoping to pass tonight. Obviously, this will provide an alternate enforcement structure that we can use in the town of Parry Sound. And this will be used for both the enforcement of municipal bylaws as well as for automated speed enforcement. And this does replace the traditional enforcement path through the POA court system.
Now, this has something to do with the speed cameras, right?
Certainly, through your worship, this administrative penalty system provides the framework by which the automated speed enforcement will be done. So it will be different than a traditional ticket that would move through the court system. For the automated speed, they would receive an administrative penalty order, which is a monetary fine. So it's a very similar process. It just removes the court system and allows the municipality to administer the whole process. So it does make it more streamlined and effective.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Keith?
Yes, thank you. So I'm just not clear on one thing. Does that mean, does the demerit system come into play at all with this system? Or because it's, it seems to me when you get a ticket before, depending on what it was, you could lose demerit points. How does that play into the picture?
Through your worship, there are no demerit points associated with any type of automated speed enforcement. So enforcement done through a camera system is just a monetary fine.
Okay. Councillor Belaski?
Thank you, your worship. There's so much legal wording in this that I think I got a little bit confused, so I could use some help. Some of the fines, and I'm just trying to get up to them here. And I'm talking about the other bylaw infractions. If they're not paid, am I reading this? You can put it on the taxes.
Through your worship, there are a few methods of follow-up if a fine isn't paid. So if it is associated with a vehicle, such as a parking fine, it would still be collectible through, plate denial. If it's not been paid, they can use that process. But for some of the other municipal fines, you can absolutely add it to taxes if it's not paid for those that are property owners. So many of those fines that would apply.
Thanks again, your worship. We'll just pick a light one here. Use of public dock or boat of storage or material causing a disturbance, $300 fine. That could eventually be put on your taxes.
If somebody was issued a penalty notice for that violation and they did choose not to pay the fine, they didn't go through any of the processes where they could appeal that fine, then if it remained unpaid, that could be an option that it could go on their taxes. Now, oh, sorry. At this time, we are looking to pass a portion of the bylaw to be able to move forward with automated speed. And then we will be moving forward with the administrative penalties for municipal bylaws at a later time. That does require amendment of all of our bylaws to use this system. So the first step is having the administrative penalty system in place, and then we will be moving all of our bylaws into it.
Thank you. Just another quick one here. I'm just looking, allowing dogs to run at large is $150 fine. Again, could that be put on taxes?
Through your worship.
Property tax, I'm sorry.
Yep, for sure it could be. Again, if it was an unpaid fine, that could be something that could be applied to taxes.
I thank you. I don't want to go on. A lot of them here just don't make sense to me at all, that you're going to get fines put on your property taxes. Cause emit or prevent noise from a toy or model or replica during prohibited times. And I'm just going to go way off base here, but let's say that a gentleman has a house rented out. He owns a home and he rents it out to a tenant. The tenant gets one of these fines, and before the paperwork goes through, the tenant moves out. The homeowner doesn't know anything about it. So then it goes on to, and he gets to put on his taxes. He goes to pay his taxes and said, "Oh, you got a $300 fine here for preventing noise during prohibited times." We're fining people that for things that maybe they don't even know about. I just really have problems just automatically being able to put things on household taxes. It just, it just doesn't make sense to me. And of course, I think most of this council know how I feel about the speeding cameras. I can't vote for anything that's got a speeding camera attached to it, but this putting all these fines on property taxes just, I guess it could go into effect as cause of noise from operation of construction equipment during prohibited times. I guess that would work with the school right now, wouldn't it, if we could put it on the school taxes? I just, I cannot support this, and I'm not going to support this. And when it comes to voting, we'd ask for a recorded vote.
Ms. Kruger, it would only go on the property tax if it had gone through due process, correct?
Through your worship, yes, it would only be put on property tax if that was deemed the appropriate enforcement pathway. So it does provide an additional tool for enforcement. It does not mean that that tool would be used each time. Currently, the system we use, the court system, if fines remain unpaid, there is an option to go through collection agencies or some other process such as that isn't always successful. This is just one more option that administrative penalties provide as a pathway. And you're correct in your questioning of some of those. They may not all be appropriate to move forward that way. The fines that you do see listed in the Schedule A of this bylaw, those are fines we currently have in place. Those are fines that have already been approved through a set fine process. As the bylaws become, as we update the bylaws to use administrative penalties, we will keep those fines as they have already been approved, and potentially new bylaws would have new fines added. But those are already fines that we currently use in the town that are listed there. But they may not all be appropriately put forward on taxes. If you're looking at a scenario, perhaps a clean yards bylaw scenario where the property owner hasn't maintained, where it would be very appropriate to move forward in that path, then we would use that tool.
Now, with regard to Councillor Bolesky's question with regard to a tenant, and maybe the tenant moves out, is that then back on the property owner, or do we go after the tenant for actually making that disturbance?
Through your worship, it would depend on the scenario. Currently, property owners are held responsible for property standards, clean yards issues, some waste issues at their property. But there's other scenarios where a tenant would be held responsible, perhaps in a situation where a noise is made, or they are the owner of a pet and the pet has caused an issue. In those scenarios, it does not make sense for a property owner to be held responsible. But when it comes to the property itself and its maintenance, or other violations that may be property related, then there is scenarios where an owner would be held responsible.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, Your Worship.
Yep.
I know you want to stretch this out, but go. Thank you. Yeah, the thing is, and as His Worship suggested, that maybe it is a tenant that gets the fine, doesn't pay it, doesn't tell the homeowner. You can't, the bylaw people can't find him, the town office can't find this gentleman or gentlelady. So that the only option they got left is to go back on the homeowner, and it goes on his taxes. They're just, it's in here. If you've got to clean this up, if you have to clean it up, then let's send it back, clean it up, bring it back with what you want to do with it. I definitely can't. I can't. We've got 20 some. I've marked it down here. There's 35 pages in this thing. Right down to set fires when not permitted near the. And I'm being a little bit back here. I couldn't get a thing passed in this council to make people cut the trees down that are across our road. It's just too much bother for the town to find out whose property it is. But we got 30 some pages here for just things that we're going to put on as property taxes. I don't understand it. I don't agree with it. And I cannot definitely, and I ask the rest of the council not to support it at this time. Bring it up a little bit cleaner. Thank you.
Ms. Kruger, would there not be an appeal process for a property owner if all of a sudden, because of a tenant, causing a problem with there not be, I mean, obviously the property owner wasn't the reason for the disturbance. Is there not a process for the property owner to appeal?
Through your worship, maybe to clarify the penalty notice, if there is a violation, it can only be put on taxes if it is against the property owner. So if there was a disturbance and a tenant was involved and they were the one issued the notice, they would absolutely have a process where they can, you know, ask for that to be reviewed. But it would be issued to the tenant, and so in that scenario, it would not be put on taxes. There are a few scenarios, as I mentioned, like a clean yards issue, where it is always it's always against the homeowner. It is not against a tenant if there is an issue with maintenance of the property or a clean yard. Those are property-based violations, and therefore the property owner is held responsible, but would also be the individual receiving the penalty notice. If the tenant receives the penalty notice, it would not be applied to the taxes of a property held in somebody else's name.
Right.
So hopefully that clarifies. And, you know, the Schedule A listing, I understand it's very long. That does list all of our current bylaws with all of our current fines. So none of those are new. Those are bylaws we have in place. They're just listed. And at this time, we would not be moving forward with the enforcement of the municipal bylaws through the administrative penalty system. That would be phased in at a later date, as we would first have to amend those other bylaws to use them for administrative penalties. So this isn't going to change overnight with the passing of this bylaw. It would put the framework in place, and the first piece that would move forward would be the automated speed piece, and the municipal bylaws would move forward after that.
Okay, all right. Before I go to Councillor McCann, I do have one question with regard to, from myself, with regard to the actual automated speed enforcement. And that is where does the fine first kick in, at what speed?
Through your worship. So the camera systems that are used, they do have a threshold that is set. That is not something that, you know, that's not something that is disclosed. But essentially any speed over the posted speed limit could be considered a violation. And the fines associated with those like for the set speeds is set out in the Highway Traffic Act. So that's something that has been already passed through legislation. Those speeds are set for the different amounts of speed over the speed limit.
But do we know? So example, the community safety zone on Joseph Street. I mean, that's going to be one of the primary areas. Maybe Mr. Kearns has an answer too. I don't know. The speed limit is 40. Where does it actually kick in? Is it 45, 42, 40, 50, 51? I think that's something that people need to know, because if it is 40, that makes it very challenging for people to try and hold that speed, especially when you're going up a grade or that sort of thing. So, Mr. Kearns.
So, Your Worship, I thank you for the question. And as Ms. Kruger alluded to, the speed limit is 40.
Yeah.
And just you could very well, even in an automated speed enforcement zone, an officer could choose to issue you a ticket. So as soon as you break the speed limit, there is a fine associated with it. It's a very low fine at low speeds. I can say from personal experience, I'm aware of someone who received a fine in an automated speed zone in another municipality at 11 kilometers an hour over the speed limit. So a fine was issued, it was received in the mail at 11 kilometers an hour over the speed limit. Just as I think the police will never tell you that you can go, you know, you hear all sorts of things about different highways, and, you know, some people believe that they can go 140 or 150 and not be subject to fines. As soon as you break the speed limit, you're subject to enforcement. So, I mean, the messaging being, and I will speak from my own experiences driving through town. I'm very cognizant of the speed limits through town, dealing with what we deal with on a regular basis. And I have lots of people that don't like driving behind me in that 40 zone because I make it a point of adhering to that speed limit, especially in community safety zones. And actually that goes for elsewhere where I drive it, particularly in community safety zones. We'd encourage people to be more cognizant of the fact that it's probably a very short zone. The speed limit change adds mere seconds to the trip that you're making, and the increase in safety is worth that a little bit of an investment in time. So there isn't a published threshold, just as there wouldn't be with the OPP saying we're going to permit everyone to go 20 kilometers an hour over the speed limit on the 400 series highways. There's officer discretion in that case, but as I said, like I've seen an example where someone's received a ticket at 11 kilometers an hour over in one of the automated speed enforcement zones in the province.
Okay, all right, very good. Councilor McCann.
So, Mr. Mayor, question you had was one I had in mind about going back to the tenant and the fact that the fine or the infraction would be follow the tenant, the individual. I can see where it would be more fair to neighbors in a community that the property owner at some point would be held responsible because you do have negligent property owners, so there might be some incentive there. But I was wondering, I support the spirit of what Councillor Bileski is saying. This isn't a perfect world, and this is not a perfect system. We have people from other municipalities that could be in town and causing infractions. We can't take their tax money because they live in another municipality. So maybe the point of collection or maybe there might be more of an even playing field if we said, okay, if you don't pay your fine, it goes to a collection agency. And people who are careful about paying their bills, the last thing you want is a collection agency on your record, because it does ruin your credit rating as far as I know. So maybe that's a compromise to what Mr. Councillor Bileski was saying, that if we even the playing field for retribution or collecting fines, that we find one way to do it, and it makes it fair. So whether you live in Carling or Parry Sound or Toronto, you're going to be sought after in the same manner.
So are you of the understanding then that whatever happens, it would go back on a property owner's tax bill?
Well, Ms. Kruger had suggested that, okay, if you've got a tenant who's been named in a fraction for a messy, for messy properties, if he doesn't clean up, if he doesn't pay up, the landowner eventually becomes responsible for it. And the landlord, there are good landlords out there, but there are bad ones out there as well too. So I guess what I'm saying is that it's a bit of a conundrum, I suppose, but I'm saying in terms of equaling the field, collecting from those who broken the law should be the same across the board.
Well, I mean, if a landlord is renting a piece of property and collecting rent, that landlord should be making sure that the property is being kept in a reasonable condition.
Well,
and I'll let Chief Thompson or Ms. Kruger answer this, but if the owner is renting the property to someone and it has to do with a property standards issue, that person renting the property should be making sure that their property, for liability reasons, is in good condition or whatever, and be going after the tenant. So if the landlord is not going after the tenant to do it, which in the first case, the tenant would be charge probably for not complying with property standards, then it would fall back onto the property owner because the property owner has then been negligent to make sure that the property has been not kept up properly, and therefore is somewhat liable for not keeping the property up to a property standard. Ms. Kruger, does that make sense?
Through your worship, absolutely. This is just a tool that is available to us through administrative penalties. It won't be applied in every scenario, and certainly won't be applied if a tenant is being charged for some type of nuisance offense, like as it was mentioned, noise, or maybe their dog was running around. That would be directed to the tenant because that's who would receive the penalty notice. Similar exactly to the system we have now. The big difference is really just how those notices are handled. If currently a property owner doesn't maintain their property, they are the ones held responsible currently. And perhaps, if work is done on their property, that goes back on taxes if we have to undertake the work. So in certain scenarios that process is available, but not through our court systems. With the administrative penalties, it would mean if a property owner was charged with an offense that was related to them and their property, then that would potentially go back on their taxes. So not all the offenses listed. It's just one more tool that will be available to us through this system.
So, and I agree, and I mean, I guess I might have misrepresented myself, but basically what I'm saying is this: these are different charges, and you can't, I guess, enforce them all the same way. I agree that a property owner should be ultimately responsible, but if you've got somebody who lives in Carling, who refuses to pay a fine because he used the dock at the wrong time of the day or started a fire where he shouldn't have been. How do you collect on that? You certainly can't. A collection agency just seems to be something that would work across the board, and you have a. Rather than, if you know what I'm saying, I think I'm getting.
I think you've gone too far into the weeds.
Yeah.
And you don't have anything to clip those weeds with right now. So I think you're better to just leave it alone. I think they're putting the tools in place to be able to handle these situations.
If I summarized it, I would say that I'm looking for a means to penalize people that's even and fair, and it's a fair playing ground to everyone. And a collection agency seems to be something that could do that. There's a lot of things in this in this motion that don't necessarily refer to property.
No, but sometimes collections agencies don't get what they want either. So, Chief Thompson.
Through you, Ms. Mayor, I was just going to reinforce something. I think everyone understood something that Ms. Kruger said, but I wanted to reinforce it that what you're seeing here is a laundry list of everything that we currently have on the books.
Yeah.
All of those individual bylaws will have to be amended to then enact this. So they all have to come back to you at one time or another to then be able to utilize administrative penalties as a tool. So council gets another kick at every individual single bylaw when it comes back to you for those purposes for administrative penalties to actually be able to be utilized. This is mainly in front of you because of the automated speed enforcement. That is the current issue, and the issue that Mr. Kern suggested that we could have it in place by the end of September, or I think the end of summer was actually what was said. If that is the goal, this needs to be moved forward.
Yeah.
Automated speed enforcement cannot move forward without this.
So, Councillor Bileski, you said you had a question. Are you going into the weeds where Councillor McCann was, or are you going to stay out of it? And are you going to talk about speed enforcement?
I don't even want to talk about speed enforcement because I'm completely set against it. So
okay, but
there's nothing I can do that way. I just said I was going to go on. We moved out talking about the weeds. We moved a wee bit out of the weeds there and got into weeds where it was property standards we were worried about. I'm worried about this whole list of fractions here that ultimately, the way I'm reading it, ultimately, if you can't collect it any other way, you can put it on the property taxes of somebody.
And I think I just heard Mr. Thompson say that they will all be coming back at some point to council in different bylaws, okay?
Exactly, but the way it is now, your worship, they can. If this bylaw goes through tonight, correct me if I'm wrong, this bylaw goes through tonight, there's no way you can put it on anybody's taxes. Is that correct?
Mr. Chief Thompson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think I just heard a double negative.
Yeah.
If this bylaw goes through tonight, we still have to bring back individual bylaws that enable all these fines in the first place to then allow for administrative penalties. And we need to be correct on this. And I want Ms. Kruger to interrupt if I'm wrong in saying that. But
Through your worship, that's correct. The bylaws do need to come back for that administrative penalty section to be added to each one to be able to use this framework. So this bylaw is essentially the set of rules and the framework by which administrative penalties will proceed. But each bylaw needs to be brought to council and amended to have administrative penalties added. And in addition, the section, like the bylaw in itself will be passed, but part 1 and the Schedule A, which has the laundry list of bylaws, will be enacted at a different date in the future when we're ready to move forward with all those bylaws. So you'll be seeing all of those, as well as we'll enact that portion of this one. The main body of the bylaw allowing for speed enforcement to move forward in an administrative penalty system is the piece that we will be moving forward with, provided this is passed tonight.
And then I'm done. Fine, then remove everything that's here other than the speed enforcement and bring it forward and let this other, when you're ready to bring the rest forward, bring them forward. Just come forward with the speed enforcement.
Chief?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Oh boy, just trying to organize my thoughts to try to bring it through, because Ms. Kruger really got into the weeds there too, but she understands the weeds and can talk about the weeds.
She owns the lawnmower.
After, if this were to be passed the way it is tonight, no penalties can be rolled onto someone's taxes immediately tomorrow. Anything else has to come back to council to do that. The alternative presented by the councillor is an option, but it's a very inefficient one to be coming and amending and amending and amending bylaws again and again and again. And we have a great deal of problem with our bylaws that we do that with. I mean, one of them would be the traffic bylaw. Has so many amendments onto it, it's very difficult to look at it in a consolidated fashion. What this is intended to do is to be a comprehensive list that then in the future, at council's will, individual portions can be brought to life or enacted so that they can be utilized. So this is the efficient way to move it forward from a staff time perspective, from a ease of use of the bylaw in the future, and from an ease of use of understanding for the layperson looking at the bylaw in the future.
Councillor Ashford.
I just want to speak in favor of this particular item because to me it seems like all we're doing is trying to find the least expensive, least time-consuming way of collecting the just amount of money that a person is needing to pay because they've created an infraction. And in some cases, the person may happen to be a ratepayer of the town of Parry Sound, in which if that person commits an infraction, like lets their dog run around on the fitness trail and it gets, weeds, and commits an infraction, that one person would, if they happen to own a house, this would be one method of collecting, which would be far cheaper than the court system, which is why another level of government has created this possibility for us. And I have to say, I think it's a great idea because there is a group of people that sometimes seems to be growing that make their days and lives based on not paying their fair share of what they've done. And they treat our bylaw officers terribly
and spend all their time criticizing. Like I can only imagine someone committing an infraction and is then corrected by the bylaw officer. And our bylaw officers are completely ignored and told, good luck collecting the money from me. You'll spend more in court. And now we have an option. This is just an option that when that belligerent person treats our people poorly and commits an infraction, we can collect that money efficiently and easily when appropriate. And I think we're just supporting our team and cutting down on all that extra cost and time and effort when it comes to these things.
Okay. I think we rattled this one around entirely long enough. I think, do I need a hedge trimmer?
No hedge trimmers or weed whackers. It might be fair to say that some of us didn't understand this thing as a whole. I get what Chief Thompson has said, and in that light and spirit, I would support this. It's kind of like an omnibus type of thing.
Yeah, kind of, but it's a growing omnibus.
Yes.
It's not, it's only one thing on the bus right now. Okay, you want to record a vote? Okay.
On the question of the second and third reading and passing of the bylaw, Councillor Ashford,
Yay.
Councillor Bileski,
Nay.
Councillor Keith,
Yes.
Councillor McCann,
Yes.
Councillor McDonald,
Yay.
Mayor McGarvey.
Yes.
So the bylaw passes 5-1.
Okay, that's carried. Moved by Councillor Ashford, seconded by Councillor Pileski, the bylaw number 2025-7477 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement with Honeywell Limited for the provision of HVAC services at the Charles W. Stockey Center for the performing arts be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Councillor Ashford, second by Councillor Bileski, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? I know Ms. Mullen is online. Did you have anything you wanted to add at all?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, not on this report, no. I do have the next item as well, which
Okay,
I would like to speak about that, if that's okay.
that sounds good. Okay. Councillor Keith.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Mullen. I understood that for this TIC software, some fees are going to be waived, but it does seem to me that there's still
Councillor Keith. We're still
on
on
one
the-
hand. I apologize.
Yeah, you're one ahead. Okay. Anything on the HVAC system? Councillor Ashford.
It just seems like this is a lot of money. So I just, I looked at you kind of have a lot of HVAC items listed there in the agreement. So in that sense, maybe it makes sense for this amount of money to be spent. But does anyone have the ability to kind of assure me that this is a proper amount of money to be spent? Because it looked like the emergency calls were even on top of this. So this is just for, like, you know, from my perspective as a homeowner, changing the filter once a year. So is anyone got yeah, I know there's got to be more, but is there, can anyone tell me this is okay? This is a good price for this, or is it?
I'll let Ms. Mullen go, but I will say from the history of that building and from the beginning, because the amount of the volume of people that you can have in that building at one time, that the air change needs to be done on a regular basis and things need to be upgraded so that you do have clean air within the building. And it's important. It has always been somewhat expensive to do what it is because of the type of filters they use and that sort of thing. But the history has been there on this that it is expensive, but.
That's good enough for me, Your Worship.
Okay, well, Ms. Mullen, do you have anything you want to add with that?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, you spoke to that question a lot better than I could, because yeah, that's why we do use these companies, because they are the experts. So I am not by any means, but it is, as you can imagine, it's a very large building that has several units that operate the various parts of the facility, and it is a lot more intricate than what I would expect as well.
Okay. All right. Anything further on this one? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, moved by Councillor McDonald, second by Councillor McCann, that bylaw number 2025-7478 being a bylaw that authorized the execution of a software license agreement with Tix Hub for ticketing services at the Charles W. Stocky Center for the Performing Arts be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? It's carried. Moved by Councillor McCann, second by Councillor McDonald, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Now, Ms. Mullen, I believe you wanted to make some comments on this particular item.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. This is a fairly big change for the Stocky Center, so I appreciate the opportunity to just give a little summary. So going back to 2003, when the facility opened, a ticketing software system called Theater Manager has been exclusively used for the ticketing needs for the facility. It came as a bit of a shock to us in spring of 2024 when we learned that Theater Manager had sold its contracts to a UK-based company. Mostly because it came as a shock. We weren't expecting it. Threw us for a loop, but it was an exciting change because although we loved Theater Manager, it was very limited in what it could do for us. So upon learning of the new company that had was going to be assuming the contracts for Theater Manager, it became evident it was not the best solution for the facility. It was a 400% price increase than what we're currently paying, and didn't offer anything too exciting for us. So we took that as an opportunity to reach out to 6 different ticketing software system companies. We went through kind of a 7-month process of interviews, product demonstrations, more interviews, more questions. We asked Cal, the manager of IT, and the finance department to look at the proposal we received from TixHub. They were in agreement that this was the best solution for us. And we mainly decided to go with TixHub because they are a Canadian-owned company who have a small team who are very responsive. Other theaters that are also municipally owned and operated about our size use this company as well and have only positive feedback to share with us. It was also the most affordable option to us. Unlike the other platforms that had a licensing fee plus, per ticket items plus a percentage of your revenue, TixHub had a very modest $1 processing fee on every item sold through the system, which is paid by the customer when they're purchasing their tickets. As I think Councillor Keith was going to mention, we do have a few fees that they've waived for us, I think mostly to entice us to join their team. So for the next 5 years, we have one-time fees for this year, which are training, implementation, data migration. And then moving forward, it will be just the $1 processing fee. $1 plus HST processing fee that is paid for when you're purchasing your items.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Keith, then Councillor McCann.
Yes, thank you. I apologize. Evidently, I got ahead of myself after the last one I had. And that would be, so as you indicated, Ms. Mullen, so that's roughly a $7,500 dollar fee. That's a one-time fee for the training, data, etc. Correct?
That's correct. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. I will also note too, TixHub was the only platform that would allow us to bring all 21 and a half years worth of data from Theater Manager to the brand new system, which is valuable information. We would be pretty sad to see that go. So the data migration fee that we are paying is well worth it, because that is a significant amount of data. Because we use the ticketing software system currently to process rental deposits, gift certificates, donations, memberships, sponsorships, everything. So it's a huge piece of the Stocky Center operations that we do not want to lose.
And I certainly can appreciate that, because losing all that information, well, there might be the crying and gnashing of teeth, and we don't want that. But besides that, what I'm thinking about is, when this contract comes to an end, has there been a discussion, maybe like feelers already put out, that if you're satisfied with the service that you've been receiving, that there won't be this licensing fee considered in the possible next 5 years if you want to renew? Has there been any feelers put out in that area, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we definitely did ask that, because it seemed like a too good to be true option, and they said definitely when it comes time for us to renew, they start about a year out, and we have the opportunity to negotiate with them. We also thought a 5-year contract was amenable for the first, just because we've only ever used one system before, and we didn't want to sign on for a 10-year contract with a brand new system that we ended up not enjoying and finding issues with.
And my one last question is, I noticed under the contract termination, was the terms of that contract termination for this company similar to what you've had in the past?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's very similar. Theater manager, which was run by Arts Management, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kelsey, it was more year to year with them. And the only out clause was that if we decided to terminate our agreement with them prior to the end of our yearly agreement, we would have had to pay the anticipated fee anyway. So basically no refunds.
That's
Thank you.
correct. It was a year-to-year basis.
Okay, Councilor McCann.
Thank you. I was impressed that you could actually import that number of years of information into, or data into, a program. A lot of systems wouldn't have provided for that. So that's a bonus. Does this include online ticket sales as well? That's my first question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it includes online, in-person, and over the phone sales. That's currently what we offer.
So it seems like the software and the company have a good reputation. Where are they based out of? And do we know for a fact that service and support are there? Because often, sometimes something that looks good may be too good to be true, but it sounds like you've done your homework. So you're satisfied with their reputation for service and support. And again, I'm just looking, I don't see where they're based out of. Somewhere in North America, I imagine.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they are a Canadian-owned company with their offices in Brampton, I believe.
That's enough?
Yeah.
I read it within the information or whatever. They were in Brampton. Yeah. Any further questions? No? All in favor? And that's carried. Okay. Moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Ashford that bylaw number 2025-7479, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? And that's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Councillor Keith, second by Councillor Ashford, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. All in favor? And that's carried. So prior to adjourning, I'd like to offer the following information to the public regarding the next council meeting. Next meeting of council for the town of Parry Sound is scheduled for Tuesday, March 4th, 2025 at 7 p.m. Meeting will be held at the town of Parry Sound Council Chambers at 52 Seguin Street, entrance via Gibson Street, and will be live streamed and recorded. All regular council meetings are held at 7 p.m. on the first and third Tuesday of each month, except January and August, where only one regular meeting is scheduled. Council meeting schedule, notice of special council meetings, complete agendas and minutes and instructions on accessing live streamed and recorded council meetings are all posted on the town's website. Go to www.parrysound.ca and use the search bar. Your TV airs council meetings on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. following a regular council meeting. And for Cogeco listings, contact www.yourtv.tv. And the provincial area members, all candidates meetings at the BOCC, February the 25th, starting at 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. So anybody can get out there and ask your questions. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.